Our last speaker of this session is Professor Alf Wang, who is a professor at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, and who is visiting here for, I don't know how much longer.
A couple of months.
A couple more months.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So in my talk, I will talk about game-based learning in the classroom. I'll briefly go through motivation, why this could be a good thing, and I will share some experience, some results from experiments that we have carried out in game-based learning. So first of all, why would we like to use game-based learning in the classroom, or games? So basically, what we want to do is to transform the classroom from, I don't know if you have seen any classrooms like this, but at least sometimes it happens. We want the students to be listening and engaged in what's going on. Another problem is that the students, they're passive, or they can do other things that's mentioned in the previous talk. They can, look at the Facebook, Twitter, everything, emails and stuff. But we want to make the students active in the learning that's going on. Another major problem is that we want to go from one-way communications, like this one. I really wanted to do this session interactive, but I don't think I have time, so you can try it out later, okay? Into a more two-way interactive lecture. Another thing which is important, if you do things like this in the classroom, it's really important for the instructor to get feedback on, if you have a classroom of 500 students, how much do the students actually get from what they're saying? How much do they understand? And this is also true for the students. They would like to know if they have understood, what the teacher is saying. Do I understand it correctly? So they need some kind of feedback too. So the ultimate goal is to get a more positive learning environment and experience. That's kind of the background. So my background, I started to do research on game-based learning in 2006, and since then I've, together with the master students, I've implemented a lot of different prototypes. We have tried out a lot of different things, run a lot of experiments, and most of it didn't work well. But I will just show one thing that actually worked quite well, and it's called Kahoot. And basically what Kahoot does is to bring like a game show into the classroom. So the students can use their own devices. The teacher uses the large screen and his laptop to show questions and answers, and the student uses their own devices to give their answers. And there's points, and there's music, there's graphics and stuff like that. So just to make the classroom more engaging and exciting. And this is kind of the goal. We want students, to share and be really exciting about what you're doing. Of course, this will not replace everything you do in the classroom. It's just one of the tools you can use. It looks like this. So you have the large screen with questions, maybe with animations and pictures, and you have different answers you can give. And the students' devices, they can just choose between color or different colors and symbols that resembles the right answer. And we'll get some feedback that why don't you have the questions and the answers on the devices? That was done by design, because we didn't want the students to just look down on the devices. We wanted to make this a social happening, and the students should focus on what's going on in the front of the classroom. Okay, so now I will just go through some of the research results that we have found. The first research results is about, every time you bring something new to the classroom or other places, students and teachers are usually really excited. But what happens if you use it a lot of times? So in the first experiment, we wanted to compare kind of the first time experience versus using it through a semester in every lecture. What were the wear out effects? So we had a questionnaire that we asked first some first timers and then students at the end of the semester. One statement was, I was engaged while playing, which is really important. For the one-time event. 96% thought they were engaged while doing this Kahoot. The students that did this through a whole semester are close to 90%. So you can see there's less, but still is pretty high. Another question we asked was, I wish Kahoot would be used in other classes, which is important. For the first timers, 85%, pretty high. And then for one semester, 83%, which is also high. I just have to mention that this is one guy. And because we also got some textual feedback, and he said, I just want to listen to you when you lecture. I don't want to do anything else. I think that's strange, but okay, that's the way it is. Another thing, if it was fun, of course, the first time this is new technology, new concept, this is fun. After a semester, I was a bit surprised. Actually, close to 90% thought this was fun, and only the single guy that disagreed. And I thought, because we're playing the same thing in every lecture, there's no variation way how you play it, but of course the quizzes are different. But still, that was a pretty high number. Also, another really important thing, did they learn anything? This is their self-perception of learning, so it's not measured in other way. So 73% of the one-time event students agreed that they learned something, and the students that used this throughout the semester, actually more, but almost the same. I also got some feedback how they learn through using this tool. They learn by having other things than they could new ways of reviewing the literature. They also got acknowledgement if they understood the topics in the lecture. And some competitive students, they actually start to read the book before the lectures because they want to do the good they wanted to end up at the highest scores and top of the scoreboard. So last question, this was only asked for the students that did the whole semester. How often should it be used? We found that majority of students in every lecture and once a week, 37%, so almost every student wanted to use it every week. And I was a bit surprised. Of course, encouraged with the positive results. I think you probably can overuse it, and I think you can make it or minimize the wear out effects by making variation in gameplay and do all of this stuff, but I was really encouraged by the results. The second part, we did another experiment. And these are, I'm writing the papers right now on both these experiments. So the second experiment, we wanted to compare, doing quizzes using just pen and paper, which is the old-fashioned way, using a student response system, not gamified, and then using the gamified student response system. So what would the difference be? Basically, we had, in Norway, I teach a really large IT introductory course. We have about 2,000 students. So one teacher teaches the same parallel 5 times because we have to split the students. So we could do the same lecture, exactly the same lecture, but using different ways of reviewing the main topics of the lecture. So that's what we did. The first one was to use paper forms. So basically it was a multiple choice form. And to make it more similar to the electronic systems, the teacher also asked the students to raise their hands to give some feedback, how the students have voted on the different questions. So we tried to make it as similar as possible. The second one was a system called Clicker. It's basically a voting system. So the students can give their votes, and you get a graph of how they have voted. It doesn't say if you answered correctly or incorrectly, just give a voting of how the students respond to different questions. And the gamified system was the Kahoot. which then the quiz was integrated, and you have points and scoreboards and stuff like that. So what was the feedback from running this experiment? First, we wanted to see the motivation for doing kind of the quiz. I did the quiz only because the teacher told me to. We wanted to see if the only motivation for doing this quiz was because the teacher told them to. For the paper, half of them disagreed in the statement, and then we see about 25% agreed. So 25% did it only because the teacher told them to. For the clicker system, which is a more standard student response system, actually the numbers were almost the same. I was a bit surprised because I thought that the system, using their own devices would give better numbers, but yeah, slightly better, but not much. The only significant difference was the gamified version. We could see that 78% disagreed, and only 5% did it because the teacher told them to. So it seems like the gamification actually changed the motivation for doing the quiz. Not only that it was a digital platform. Another statement, the quiz was boring and not engaging, also put in a kind of negative way to see how they reacted. 60% disagreed, and only 6% agreed with the statement. More positive. If you look at the clicker system, which is the student response system, slightly better, but almost the same, apart from a larger percentage that agreed. And for the gamified system, they could add 84% disagreed in the statement. So they were more engaged by the quiz itself. So the gamification was also the difference here. Also statistically a significant different from the others. And then about the students, if they wanted to do better than other students, basically that if they kind of focused more just to do better on the quiz, how was it different from the paper and the clicker and the Kahoot? So for the paper, 38% wanted to do better than other students, just make more effort, put more effort into it. For the clicker system, slightly better, but almost the same. And of course, this is kind of obvious, but when you have points, scoreboard, yeah, they get more motivated for doing better than other students. You get the competitiveness from the students. Another statement that we had about the pulse, or if I felt increased pulse when answering the quiz. For paper, 13%, not much pulse. And for the clicker system, actually didn't help much. I was really surprised about that. Actually, more thought it was the paper. Maybe they thought it was closer to kind of exam, and they were getting nervous, I don't know. And for the gamified version, it was totally different. So almost half of the students got increased pulse. The last thing I would just want to mention, in this study, we also looked at the learning outcome. We had an unfortunate thing. The session where we had the clicker system, the standard student response system, we didn't have time for the students to make, we had a pre-test and a post-test, but there was not time to do the post-test, so we didn't have proper results from that part. We only had from the paper and the gamified version. The difference is not statistically significant. It was slightly higher for Kahoot, but we think basically one lecture is not enough to show the difference. But there was some indication it could be higher with the gamified, but we don't know. Another interesting fact was that for gender variations, there were more or greater gender variations for the paper version. So female students, they were much more negative towards paper-based quiz, quizzes, and also students that didn't play video games. A bit strange. And students that play video games, the male students, were more positive towards the paper quiz. And there was less variation for the gamified version. So for the gamified version, there was not a lot of variation for gender and also whether the students play video games. So that was what I wanted to say. And we have maybe some time. And I will give a demo of the system. So if you want to check it out, downstairs afterwards, so you can see how it works. And I have some more information I can give you if you want. Yes?
Great. Thank you. We have time for a few questions.
Sure. So it seems like Kahoot and the clicker are both doing what seem like effectively the same thing, yeah?
Yeah.
And so your explanation for why Kahoot did better was sort of a gamification, but it doesn't seem like there's much more game anything with Kahoot over the clicker, and so I'm how do you get to that explanation?
Yeah, the difference is, first of all, the clicker system, you only see the responses, the distribution of how the students voted for different alternatives. In Kahoot, the students get points for answering correctly and fast. And then after each question, there's a scoreboard where you can see if you're the 5 best students are shown with nicknames and their scores. And also on your device, you get your ranking and how far you are behind the students that is above you. And there is sound, and at the end of the session, the best player gets promoted with points and his name. So that's kind of the gamification part of it. Yeah. And also I think the user interface and the way everything is presented, there's audio, helps the immersion and engagement, as far as I know. But they're pretty similar, so I was surprised how much that actually made a difference.
Do we have anybody else? Do you want to? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. My question is, what research in the future are going to use in terms of finding out what is the retention?
Yeah.
For the lectures and the subject matter, because that's really of importance.
Yeah.
The understanding, and then ability to use it in the future.
Yeah.
And then separate issue, of course, is the costs that are associated with it.
You mean in terms of, yeah.
Costs, because you're looking, for example, from industrial perspective, you're looking how much is going to the system will cost me, and second is once I send the people over to lecture or classes, having a choice of the system to select how much is it going to cost me per employee in terms of immediate effort that I am paying and losing in productivity, as well as in the future that I'm expecting to gain.
Yeah.
So that's the what's in the future are you looking in terms of researching that aspect?
Yes, so right now we have a lot of users. So we have, every week we have 600,000-700,000 users. So we get a lot of data all the time. But we haven't we haven't conducted the experiment where we have looked at a long time effect, and it's really hard. We're looking into how to do it, but it's hard because there's so many factors that comes into play when you do a long, for instance, through a semester. There's so many other things, so we haven't found a perfect solution for that. In terms of cost, if you want to just use it as it is, you can. It's free.
No. What you are using, whatever system that you have, whether this Kahoot or any future system, you have obvious costs of the system. For example, whether it's in academic setting or you put it commercially, and then of course the costs in terms of time.
Yeah. Okay.
It corresponds to the money costs.
Gotcha.
Which means what you spend now and what you give up.
Oh yeah.
Because you have two things that you need to include in this calculation.
Yes.
And then once you have that, in the future, how much are you going to gain in terms of expectation of how much you're going to gain based on your knowledge of the retention and understanding that the participant gains from using that system.
Yeah,
That's basically future research, but how do you expect to do it?
I'm going to let you two take this discussion offline.
Yeah.
What I can say real briefly is I've used it in my classes, and if nothing else, it really helps just to shake up the lectures, just from time, from lecture to lecture, just like introduce something different into one of them, kind of brings more of the students back. So there's definitely some payoff.
At this point in time, you do not have any expectation in the future that you'll be doing research in that area.
We can.
Well, let's make
it's a deeper discussion, so but I would like to talk about that.
I want to get you guys to your lunch so you can actually eat before the poster session. So let's thank Professor Wang.